안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
반갑습니다. Hi, thanks for coming in and thanks for tuning in to our live chat today with Andreas from Greece. Andreas, 인사해 주세요.
안녕하세요. 그리스에서 온 안드레아스입니다. Hello, everyone. I'm Andreas from Greece. Lived in America. Now living in Korea. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. I'm really excited.
How many years have you been living in Korea for?
It's been 9 years.
9 years. Did you spend more time in the States or in Korea?
More time in Korea, actually.
Oh, wow.
I lived in USA for about 8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
Did you think about it when you were passing the 8-year mark, like last year?
Actually, I recently went back to USA to visit my friends and my parents and my brother, and it dawned on me that, man, my culture now, my values, the way I think is more aligned with Korean values than it is more so than the American ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's very natural because you've spent the recent years here in Korea and most of your friends are like here in Korea.
Yeah.
So that's only natural.
Yeah.
So yeah, today I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions that I probably never asked you before.
Okay.
Like, why do you like me so much? And how...
Ooh, that's going to be hard.
Yeah, how do you hold the respect, back from coming out of you every single minute you talk to me? But no. So as you saw in the title, Andreas and I myself also started a business in Korea. The only difference is I started my business 12 years ago.
Yeah.
You started your business, I think, this year?
This year,
Yeah.
2020, in January.
We will talk about that, and also many of you are probably interested in doing the same thing, how to maybe come to Korea as a teacher, for a teaching job, and then where do you go from that, right?
Right, and today, basically, I'd like to share with you my experiences kind of opening a new business, what the steps are in Korea, and also when you first come to Korea, when you first land here, what are the opportunities available to you in terms of employment? What are realistic possibilities for you guys? So if you have any questions, we have the chat room right there. We can see it. So any questions you have, we're going to read them off, answer them, and try to give you as much information as possible.
Exactly. And we also welcome these really, really productive comments like by Sarah, Crazy. Wow, handsome guys.
Those are the best comments.
Yes, those are
very informative.
Exactly, very helpful and useful, educational, productive.
Excellent.
Yeah, everything that's good. Okay. So, first off, Winter Bear. Really simply, if you can answer this in a brief way, is it hard to start a business in Korea in general?
In general, I'd say no, it's not. There are, however, certain obstacles that are unique to you as a foreigner who lives in Korea.
Yeah. For a Korean person as well, it is very easy to start a business. It is extremely difficult, as in other countries, to do well with your business.
Oh yeah, it's a different subject.
It's a different subject, it's a different story, all the strategies that we'll have to go into it. It's different, but starting a business, like registration-wise, it's super simple. And they don't go hard on you in terms of taxes for the first year as well. So it's really easy to start a business. It's almost like the government is encouraging you
Definitely.
all the time to start your own business if you want.
And the good thing about it is how transparent the process is to start the business. And in terms of documentation, getting what you need, it's so fast. There's no like red tape or bureaucratic loopholes that you have to go through, no stamps. I mean, there is a small process that you go through, but again, compared to, for example, my parents, when they were in Greece opening the business, it's much more difficult in Greece because it's not as streamlined or transparent where yeah, you got to get a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, everything's really streamlined for your vocabulary learning. 간소화.
간소화?
간소화.
간소화.
간소화되어 있어요. 간소화. Like it's simple and short.
간단한.
간소화되어 있어요.
So it's like small?
I believe so. I didn't look up the 한자 behind it, but I use the word all the time.
간소화.
간소화. Streamline the process. They make sure they do. And yeah, so that's that. We will talk about that a little more in detail later. But let's greet some people.
Sure.
Okay, 태국 사랑 안녕하세요. Wordson Joseph, hi. 또 읽어주세요.
And then we have from Cookie, hello. We have some Greek people in the chat room, I think. I saw some Yeleni K-popper. I read K. That's embarrassing. I'm very sorry. I thought K-popper. Kpopoulos, Eleni Kpopoulos. 안녕하세요. Καλησπέρα, Andrea. Yasu, Eleni, τι κάνεις? And yeah, who else? We have from
Hia, thank you so much. I really was searching this video, and you.
Great.
Okay, you were searching for us. Thank you. Okay, so really quickly, Bang Pink, Iena, Kusum, Tichi, Aisha, Winter Bear, Sarah, and Ready Set Sisters.
Great.
Niza. 네, 안녕하세요, 안녕하세요. Okay, perfect. So let's start from the beginning. When did you come to Korea? 9 years ago, right?
That's right. I came in 2012.
So briefly tell me about all the jobs you've had.
In Korea or
Yes, in Korea, in Korea.
So in Korea, man, I started off as an English teacher in Korea. So yeah, I started in a small city called Cheongju.
Cheongju.
And I started teaching at a public high school there. And I signed up through EPIK. And EPIK is an English, I think it's literally stands for English Program in Korea. And this provides English teaching opportunities for native speakers. And unfortunately, this program is only available for people who hold passports in English-speaking countries. Australia, UK, South Africa, United States, Canada. So because of that, and of course, my college background degree, I was able to get in as a teaching job. However, it's very competitive. That's why I landed in Cheongju and not in Seoul. So if you wish to live in a metropolitan area, Busan, Seoul, then the competition increases and you need to have a little bit more specs.
Really? Like, do they decide what city you're going to based on your specifications, your like resume, all that?
Definitely.
I see.
Definitely. So you can ask, you can set like what's first, second, or third, your preference, but based on the pool of applicants, they choose where they're going to send you.
Okay.
And I was sent to Jeongbuk-do.
I see. I might be wrong, but with the other sister program that's called, which is called TALK, T is the capital T and A and capital L and capital K, TALK, Teach and Learn in Korea.
Okay.
So through that program, university students, I believe, from English-speaking countries recognized officially, they can come to Korea before graduating, before they have a degree, to come to Korea for about a year, and they teach the curricular classes, like after-school classes.
Okay.
Teaching kids English, right?
Okay.
So the EPIK program is for people who have a degree, bachelor's degree at least, and then come to Korea for at least a year or more. Then you become the teacher who works at the school full-time. Right? So that's the difference.
Like an intern first, and then you go into the full position.
Yeah, so some people actually do the TALK program first when they're in college, and then they come back to Korea through the EPIK program. And while they're doing the EPIK program, they also look for other opportunities to maybe teach English elsewhere.
That's interesting. Leon Devereaux says TALK was canceled this year. That's interesting. Of course, these programs are all related to policies, and it's been my experience with the 9 years that I've lived here. Policy, especially economic and kind of social policy like this, changes very fast in Korea based on who the incumbent president is and what their priorities are. The policies change pretty quickly.
I'm not sure if the TALK program was canceled for good or for this year only
because of the
pandemic.
Of the COVID,
Yeah, so let us know if you know more information. But I did go to the TALK orientations and EPIK orientations to give short lectures on Korean learning and also Korean history. So I used to be very familiar with all the staff, but yeah, I miss them. I miss talking with them during their orientation. But yeah.
So Rahina asks a good question. Rather than being on an E2 teaching and learning Korean, is it better to go on a student visa and learn Korean? Good question. If you have the chance to get a teaching position, to get the E2 visa, I would recommend doing that. Now you can acquire an E2 visa is basically a visa for professional purposes and specifically English teaching. So it's 회화. They're like the E2 visa is called 회화, which is conversation visa. So this visa you can get teaching at a hagwon or teaching at a public school in Korea. Now with this visa, you have a lot of limitations. You can't have work outside of that. So any income that you have outside of your main employment, of your hagwon or your school, then when it comes time to filing tax, you're going to be heavily taxed on that. Sometimes even have to pay a fine. However, if you get permission from your school or from wherever, your school basically, you get permission to do outside activities, then it is okay. So that's what I did when I first started working on television, because I still had an E2 visa. I had to get a written consent form from my sponsor, the visa sponsor, which was my school, saying that it's okay for Andreas to go on the show on Sundays, etc., etc. And so that's how I was able to go through that. So if you have an E2 visa, you have more flexibility than a student's visa.
So it was your high school back then, right? You were still teaching in the high school.
Correct.
At the high school. So it really depends on the employer or the visa sponsor. And I think it was okay with your visa provider or sponsor, which was the high school back then, because it was just one show. If you had asked for a consent form for like 10 shows and you will be too busy in their eyes, like you'll be too tired after all those activities to teach properly, they would have said no.
Correct.
It was just one thing, one show, once a week, right?
That's it. That's right.
It really depends on the situation and the circumstances. I just saw an update from Leon about the talk program, Teach and Learn in Korea, being canceled for good. So interesting and unfortunate, because it was a good opportunity for many people to come and work a little and then also learn a little at the same time. But there will be other programs like of course, the student exchange programs, and also what is it called, like working holiday?
That's right. I don't know much about that information.
So as far as I know, Korea and the US don't have the working holiday visa program, right? But Korea has this program with more than 10 different countries, where you can go to a lot of countries in Europe and Australia on a working holiday visa for up to a year. And Korean people being able to go to that country means people in that country can come to Korea as an exchange.
Reciprocity.
Yeah, reciprocity in the same way. So you can come, and you can only use it, I think, once in your lifetime and before a certain age. So you have to think carefully about when to use it, when to utilize this opportunity.
That's good. I mean, that for our audience right now that's interested in coming to Korea, I think that's an excellent opportunity.
Yeah.
Once coming here, making some connections.
Yeah,
definitely.
And one personal regret is one of my biggest regrets so far in life is not taking opportunities of being able to go abroad for like longer. So if you can, please come to Korea and stay for at least 3 months, or if you can, for a semester or up to a year or more, when you are a student or before you continue your studies or your work. It'll like give you a lot of good opportunities in the future. So
MJ Vlogs is asking, am I able to work in a fashion or business administration as a foreigner in Korea? Now this is a great question.
When my friends ask me, like when it's like the general audience in front of whom I need to be a little more formal, I give different answers. But when it's a close friend like you, I just say this honestly: why would they pick you? So in a way, why would they hire you when there are other applicants who are Korean people with whom they have less trouble, like employment process-wise and all that? So if you have that reason why they would rather choose you over other people who are easier to hire, you can definitely.
And in order to do that, you
Yeah.
need to be an expert.
Yeah, so in your industry, in your field, you need to be an expert, like one of a kind, the best in the field. And it helps if you also speak Korean really well. So I would say study Korean hard, like
Yeah.
really, really study. And then, so I think it's kind of like a total sum of your actual skills in that expertise and your Korean skills combined.
Combined.
Yeah, because even if you're not the best in the field, if your Korean skills can kind of make up,
Substitute.
substitute what is lacking, you can get a passing score, I would say.
Yeah.
So I always tell my friends, why would they pick you?
Yeah, and that's the honest question, really. I mean, one of the biggest issues is, like Hyunwoo said, if you have getting a visa is actually difficult for employers as well, because the nation prioritizes its own citizens, and which makes sense. You know, its own citizens come first. So unless you're an expert or you can provide some great value for a company, then it's difficult to get a job. Now, for other work, like I know a huge migrant or a lot of immigrants that come to South Korea are typically blue-collar workers, so workers that work in a field or that work in factories. Now, maybe that's the job that you're interested in, but that is a route as well, because usually when you come on those terms, it's for cheaper labor. So that's when it's affordable for big companies to bring in outside hands, basically, because it's more affordable in a macro scale as opposed to a micro scale.
Yeah, you need to do a lot of research, like into what kind of companies or employers or organizations might be looking for a talent like yourself.
Yeah.
Like what organization needs a person who has the specific skills that I have. And if you can find that organization, it's really not that difficult to be connected to whoever is this decision maker in Korea.
So Julian Almeida asks, is 3 months enough to learn Korean in Korea?
How was your Korean 3 months after you came to Korea?
0. 0. I mean, like nothing sticks. But then again, I came to Korea not knowing a single word. Like I swear to God, I still remember sitting on my porch and trying to memorize 화장실 어디예요. It took me like a week just to memorize that.
Yeah.
And then coming to Korea, I kind of gave up. But then after 4 or 5 months, I was like, okay, let's get serious with this. And then I sat down, kind of studied, and then little by little, I think after a year, I was able to form sentences and kind of communicate my ideas well enough.
Yeah.
But if you have studied Korean, especially through Talk to Me in Korean, the best business in the game.
Thank you.
Then coming to Korea and in the 3 months, you're gonna see drastic increase because you're gonna use it, you're gonna learn what you don't know, you're gonna learn what you need to know. So if you have a foundation and you come to Korea within 3 months, it will be the equivalent of studying alone, I would say, probably about a year to 2 years. So, but definitely need that foundation to come before you come.
A lot of people postpone their start until they actually come to Korea, until actually they land in Korea. But if you come and just find yourself busy sometimes, just hanging out with friends or trying to settle down here, you might be having some difficulties finding the time to study. So just know that just because you're here, learning doesn't automatically happen. And many people actually regret not having started learning Korean sooner before they left for Korea.
Yeah.
So definitely start studying right now, start studying hard right now, and then when you do eventually come to Korea for a certain period of time, you can do what Andreas suggested, actually like start interacting with people, and then you will feel your Korean improving a lot. And on that note, I also saw a question from one of those comments earlier. How did you overcome your Korean plateaus? Like, I'm sure you've hit plateaus many times.
Big time.
Like your Korean is improving, but then it's not improving. It doesn't feel like growing at all. How did you overcome those moments?
I've been in a plateau for 5 years.
For the past 5 years?
Yeah, I feel like after 5 years, I kind of increased, and then it's been there. So
no, you're improving. I can tell.
I mean, it's inevitable, you know. But
Really?
listen, when you reach so learning a language, it's a step system. Don't think of it as a curve. It's steps. So you're gonna be like this for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden, boom, something's gonna click, and you're gonna be much more fluent.
Yeah.
But then you're gonna plateau again.
Yeah.
So honestly, it's just understanding and accepting that's the reality of learning a language.
Of course.
And you just you stick to what keeps working for you, even if you don't see the results. And that's faith. You need to have faith when you're learning a language. And
yeah, and also how you feel or how you know that you are plateauing is also important. Like if you feel like you're hitting plateaus too often, or you've hit a plateau and you're not improving because of a certain type of conversation you have to have for your job, because of a show, we'll talk about it, like a TV show that you're on, and you feel like I'm not improving fast enough. Maybe it's because that environment is making you feel like you're hitting a plateau. In other areas of the Korean language learning experience, you might be improving fast, but that one experiment or experience is so big and I guess influential in your life that you think you're not improving. So
that was the case for me, definitely.
Yeah, so you need to kind of give yourself more opportunities, like all around, like maybe try reading a different kind of book, try studying with a different kind of material, or try watching a different kind of show than what you normally
diversify your learning.
So
I'd like to answer Shushmita. She asks, 안녕하세요, can we do freelancing while studying Korean in Korea? So it depends. Are you a student? If you have a student visa, then freelancing jobs are not legal technically. So I know a lot of students that are in university but still do modeling jobs on the side, and that's something that I want to talk about as well. But that is not, it's technically not legal. So there's routes where if a company really wants to use you as a model for their company, then they have to provide you with a different payment method. They can't just directly transfer you the money, otherwise it's illegal for them and illegal for you to accept it. So I know that it's given through not food stamps, but like vouchers. They get paid with vouchers where they can spend the money at a department store or something like that.
Gift certificates.
Gift certificates. There you go.
상품권.
상품권. And so it's not legal, so it is a little shady.
Yeah. Also, a lot of people do private tutoring on the side. Not so much these days due to the pandemic. But before, I would say I know many of my friends used to teach English on the side or teach Spanish on the side, while they are studying at a university. So there's definitely a lot of demand for English private tutoring sessions, and Spanish, Chinese, French, I would say, those 4 languages at least, and
Chinese.
Yeah,
big time.
It's big. So that's possible, but not technically legal, right? Nobody's gonna be looking into your bank account every month,
right?
No, like it's not likely that you will be caught and you will get into trouble for that because the amount won't be that huge,
unless you make like a ridiculous amount of money. And then at the end of the year, when you file taxes, that's when it's going to get red flags. And especially if you get paid in cash, it's highly unlikely that you will get into trouble, but we don't recommend doing that because it's not labeled as a legal activity. Right. But this is the situation.
Yeah.
I'd like to answer Everyday Seb. He says, we talk about teaching jobs. What about IT remote contracts, especially from Canadian US professional? Do we still need a working visa as a contractor that works remotely for Korean companies? I'm going to say that still in Korea, working remotely is kind of it's a foreign concept. It's not that widely accepted, not as much as the United States has adopted it. I don't know what it's going to be like in the future, but currently finding an IT job, to be honest, I don't know much about the IT industry and how they employ people, but I know in the general terms for regular jobs, presence and being in person having like a Korean bank account, being there is kind of a prerequisite.
Yep, and like if you can get a job, like get a contract with a Korean company or a Korean person who wants to work with you, that's good. But I think even finding something like that, finding a lead like that is extremely difficult because people don't know where to post job postings, like, you know, where to post job ads. So people are just still used to only working within Korea with Korean developers. And among the good news is, it's not good news for companies in general, but the good news is the demand is really high for skilled IT, like engineers and developers, really big time, but there are not enough people. And a lot of big name companies like Google and Naver, they've hired a lot of like high profile engineers and developers. So the market it feels like it is not as full as before with applicants. So many companies, like smaller companies, are struggling to find the right like technical experts. So maybe that's good news. So
yeah, I guess they would be hiring through Canadian Canadian job sites, right? As opposed to Korean job sites. So you'd probably see those postings of it. You'd have a better chance finding those postings within your country than you would in Korea.
Yeah, and I want to mention one thing with regard to what you said. Working remotely was never really common in Korea until the past couple of years.
Right.
Like the pandemic has changed many things for many people, and working remotely is one of those aspects. So I would say now people are like more willing to and ready to work remotely. Many big companies, because I mean, companies that are our size, 20, 30 people, we can decide whatever we want to do, and we can just do whatever we want to do. Nobody's going to tell us like, hey, if you have this many people, you need to do this. But companies that have like 2,000 employees, 4,000 employees, like Naver, they need to be like extremely cautious because with the nature of the pandemic, if it spreads in such a big group, it's uncontrollable. So I know Naver is asking everyone to, not allowing anyone to come to office until the end of this year, unless they absolutely must go to the office. So they actually have to fill out a form. Can I please go to the office? For these reasons. Yeah, so they have to keep the office empty. So now companies are, I guess, doing better in terms of working remotely. So maybe the situation will be better for you if you want to find job opportunities remotely.
So let's see. I'm still in high school. I want to start a business in Korea, and I was searching this video. Well, that's very nice, and the motive pop up and etc. So if you want to start a business in Korea, I think it's one good thing is to know what you want to start in Korea, and kind of you really gotta know the market. I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got is just really know the market, know what already exists and what doesn't exist, because a lot of the times when I first started, so my business is called Move Up, and it's an online training platform where people, because of COVID, they couldn't go to gyms. A lot of the gyms were closed here in Korea. So instead of not working out at all, I provided this service where for one hour, twice a week, people would get together, and through Zoom, we would do classes together. And it'd be 30 minutes of workout, 15 minutes of stretching and cool down, and then 15 minutes of talking about health, mental health, physical health. And that service, I think a lot of people found it unique because they didn't have that outlet. And before doing that, I did a lot of research, and I saw what was already being done. And I saw there was very specific subscription services. You got to do this one to this amount, and it was very structured in terms of like, okay, Pilates level 1, level 2, and I kind of based my model off of those models in order for the Korean market to be a little bit more the customer to be more familiar with the process. But it's not always the case. Once you know that, then you know how to branch off and how to make it unique.
Yeah. I think there can be two directions. You came to Korea without any plans for starting a business, right?
No,
you came to Korea because you wanted to live here, at least for a while.
Yeah.
And you started working and you started making friends, interacting with people, and then started learning Korean more seriously. And then that led to your next job, which was teaching English at a university. And then while you were at your English teaching job at the university, you also started looking for other opportunities in broadcasting.
That's right.
And then that led to this right now. This business that you recently started to move up.
Right, but there's one important piece of that that we need to mention. So during that time, I was on an E2 visa. But in order for me to even start the business, to starting the business process, I could not do that on an E2 visa. I was able to get the F2 visa. Now, F2 visa is called a Goju visa, which is like a long-term resident visa. Now, in order to get this visa, it's on a point system. So based on several factors, your education, how much time you've spent in Korea, your income, and your Korean level, based on that, you get a certain grade. And if you have enough points, you pass, then you can get this visa. You can apply and get this visa. Now, in order to do this, I needed to do a couple classes that took about 6 months. And I needed to go there like 4 hours every Saturday and Sunday for 6 months.
Wow.
And it wasn't an easy process, but it's necessary because with that F2 visa, I'm free of needing to have somebody sponsor my visa. So I can reside here as a freelancer. And that's a key thing that's hard to get. I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy to get.
Yeah.
I've been here 9 years. I got it after my 6th year. So it's not easy to get, but once you get it, then it opens up a lot more doors with banks and applying for stuff.
I think it's similar with other countries, but I think coming to Korea with, I mentioned that there were I think there were two directions, right? One direction is what you did, coming to Korea first through a job that was available to you at the time, and then gradually working your way up or to something and doing other things. Or you can think of, okay, do the market research and what's missing in Korea, what's not popular yet but can be popular in Korea. I'll do that over there. That second approach is not as easy as in, say, other countries, I think.
Or your own country, because you'll find a lot of obstacles, especially if you don't speak the language.
Yeah, so most people who eventually end up starting a business or being able to start a business in Korea will go through the first route, coming to Korea and doing something is not related to your original plan yet, but you have to kind of take a detour, and you have to understand that it takes time, and especially for your Korean levels to kind of match up to.
That's right.
Studying. So you did that over the past 9 years, and do you think you could have sped things up a little? Done everything in 5 years or 4 years?
Yes, I do think that. I think
you didn't want to necessarily.
Exactly. I was satisfied with my current position. I mean, I was teaching at a university, and I really liked that job. It was a great job. But then it got just too comfortable, and I felt complacent, and I wanted to challenge myself in a new way. And
I remember when you told me that, man, I'm going to make the decision, take the leap.
It was tough.
Because your university wanted you to renew your contract, right? You could have continued working there if they wanted. And you didn't only work at one university. So briefly, you started at a high school in Cheongju, a smaller city in Chungcheongdo, Chungcheong province, south of Seoul. And then you started working at a university in the same city.
Right, 충북대학교.
And then you moved to Seoul and got a job and moved to Seoul at Hanyang University. Hanyang University is one of the better known universities in Korea. So pretty much everybody knows where Hanyang University is and that it is a good, university. So you got your job there. Do you think getting the job, landing the job, or being a teacher at Hanyang University helped you better with the TV gig? Could you have gotten the same opportunity if you were in Cheongju? Or were you?
Good question. I think, to be honest, getting the job at Hanyang University, having done work on television, might have been detrimental. Actually,
I see.
Because they thought that I kind of lacked focus, or
it was the opposite.
It was the opposite
order. So you did TV first.
Yes.
While still being in Cheongju.
Right.
So okay.
Yeah, when I was living in Cheongju, I had to go to Seoul back and forth.
Right.
That was a period of my life that was tough.
I see.
Yeah, but so yeah, afterwards when I wanted to apply for the jobs, because I remember applying to Goryeo as well, and I had an interview and they had the same question. And I told them, no, I mean, this is my priority.
I see.
Bangchong is second. But, so yeah, eventually, ultimately though, I found kind of the limit of where that industry takes you. Teaching English in Korea, the limit is basically there for me, who just had a master's degree. And if I wanted to become a resident professor, then I'd need a PhD. And that's a route that I didn't want to go down that.
I see. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting and complicated, like the demand for English education. Really briefly, like to explain it really briefly, because of the modern Korean history, like with the compressed growth, everybody's doing better than before. Everybody's becoming richer than before. The country as a whole, we're now, like, according to the World Bank and IMF, we're the 10th largest economy in the world.
10th?
10th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, South Korea has finally become the 10th largest economy.
11th, yeah.
11th, or like lower, but now it's 10, number 10. And seeing that happen, like within 70 years or so, people know this will continue, and the competition is like really, really strong, right? Like really intense. And one thing that can guarantee success or comfortable life for their children is English education. So the demand will never go away. Like there are more 영어 학원s, like English tutoring institutes, like here and there than before. But there are fewer jobs, it seems, as native speakers, because because of the government's policies can change year by year, and two, there are more and more Korean people who can speak fairly good English, who came back from other areas of the world. Yeah, so many factors combined. It seems like there are fewer jobs for teaching English for people from other countries, but the demand is higher than ever. It's really
strange,
ironic.
Huh? Yeah, and policy changes also based on research. So Korea is very quick to change the policy based on the latest research findings. And I know during the 90s they pushed really hard at input. So they believed that having native speakers, regardless of the level of the learner, that would provide enough stimulus and input for the learner to learn English at a natural pace. And that was what the studies showed at the time during the 90s and the early 2000s. But then more research came out and showed that the distance between the teacher and the learner, if the gap is too big, it's actually detrimental to the learner. So especially if the speaker does not know the language, the native speaker of the learner, then you're running into some problems there. And I think many people have come to realize that you can't just plop a native English speaker in like a level 1 English class and expect them to just learn through osmosis. That's just it's not realistic.
Learning through osmosis.
Yeah.
삼투 현상.
삼투 현상.
삼투 현상. Osmosis is 삼투 현상.
삼투 현상.
Yeah, random Korean word for you. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that we also believe in Korean teachers needing to know at least one other language, because if you only speak Korean, there are limits as to what kind of teacher you can be, right? If you don't understand the struggles or the differences as a learner, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and
Sylvia asks, is there demands for other languages other than English, such as Italian, French, Spanish? Yeah, there are demands. But they're not as high as Chinese or English.
Yeah.
And there are actually high schools throughout the country, foreign language high schools that provide specific training in either Russian, Italian, French, German. They have those schools set up actually, and yeah, tutoring services do exist, but again, the demand is not that high. I don't know if I can imagine it's possible to get an E2 visa in order to teach one of those languages. The process probably would be same, but just more competitive and more smaller market.
Yeah, definitely fewer jobs than English teaching jobs, because the schools you mentioned, the subjects are there in the foreign language high schools. 외국어 고등학교.
맞아요.
Yeah, we do have those in Korea. 외국어 고등학교. For your reference, there are 일반 고등학교s, like regular high schools. Most people go to 일반 고등학교. I went to one of those. And there's 외국어 고등학교, foreign language high school, and it's, you know, like assumed that smarter students go to 외고. It's 외고 for short, because you have to take a specific test, admission test made by the school itself to enter that 외고. And there's also science high schools, 과학 고등학교. Those special purpose high schools exist. And 외고, if you get a job as a German teacher, Spanish teacher, French teacher, or an Italian teacher at a 외고, you can say that your job will be very stable.
Yeah.
Because they will always need at least one teacher to teach that language. So it's
the
just
turnover is
competitive.
not common though. The turnover is not that often. So
yeah.
So El Diora too asks, I get lost motivation when I hear only about university or bachelor chances. So the train left for working people 30 plus, like office jobs, right? So do you mean like working? Do you currently work an office job, or do you want to find an office job?
So, I mean, if you are over 30 years old and if you want to come to Korea and get a job somewhere, I guess, is it too late? Well, I would say it's a little more challenging than for a student whose career is not set, you know, set in stone yet.
More flexible.
Yeah, more flexible. You can spend more time. You can spend like up to a couple of years in Korea before you actually get a job, through various programs, student exchange programs and things like that. But like that's why how good your Korean is really depends on that. And yeah.
If you're over 30 now, it also means that you have a little bit more, you have a career, so you have some kind of experience that you can advertise, you can sell yourself better. But again, Korean language is the important factor.
It's a really important factor. And back to your story, like what you did, you said that you could have sped up the process of coming to Korea and going through these jobs, the initial few jobs, and then starting getting the F2 visa and starting your business. Not that this is the final chapter, right, of your career. Right? You will do other things too. But like for people who are 30 plus years old or 40, you know, or older, I think what you did, coming to Korea through a job that's probably not in their like field of expertise, and then actually working toward the goal of getting a residency visa. And then being able to finally do whatever you want.
Have more flexibility.
Yeah, you can start a business, and then you can hire Korean people who will do all the work that
logistics.
Native Korean speakers can do, something like that. So you need to think of that as well. That's not like a prerequisite for everybody who is older than 30, but I think that's a realistic approach. Okay.
So BJ Pilat, I'm planning to teach English in Korea next year, but I'm worried about any stigmas about Asians teaching English to other Asians. Are there any problems regarding this that you're aware of?
Not me. I haven't seen any.
Oh, not you? I meant like you personally.
No. I mean, I haven't seen anything like that, like any stigmas.
Stigmas, interesting. That's a kind of a heavy word, but from my perspective, when I was teaching in Cheongju, I did have some friends who were Kyopos, who were of Korean ethnicity that lived in the United States their whole lives but couldn't speak Korean. But they came back to Korea and they were teaching English. But they told me from their perspective that that they were kind of treated in a different way. Let me put it this way: the faculty was much more lenient with my mistakes than they were with the mistakes of him.
Okay, yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Because just visually seeing, I'm much more visually different. So if I make a mistake, let's say I pass the water with one hand versus my friend passes the water with one hand, it's like, it's a little bit different. So there's more leeway given to those people.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I said that I haven't seen any stigmas being applied or felt around me, but that's when you are from other Asian countries, you are like looks-wise or accent-wise, linguistically, you are from other Asian countries, and people can tell, oh, okay, he or she is from Chinese background or Japanese background, and they are American or British, and they don't speak Korean. People can tell, and then they don't expect anything from them, like in terms of understanding Korean culture perfectly and being able to do things that require knowing Korean or speaking Korean. But if you look and sound Korean, if you speak Korean, there are certain expectations that people will have, and of course they will become less lenient. Yeah, I've seen that.
So, Madame de Tourvel, thank you so much.
Thank you for the super chat comment. The message says,
just want to say thank you for this interesting topic, although I only want to come for holiday to visit sometime in the future. Have a nice day. Well, have a nice day too, Madame Tourvel. Hopefully
Thank you.
See you in Korea.
And Sylvia, thank you, Madame de Tourvel, for donating super chats every single time you're here. Thank you, I appreciate it. Sylvia says, such a relevant live chat. Thank you for bringing this topic on the table. Thank you for joining. And then,
do you know, so Daniel T asks, do you know if the Oasis program or how the Oasis program works at the moment? I was planning to come last year, but the visa issuance was suspended. Now EU people get visa-free entry again, but how about
longer visa? I'm not familiar with the Oasis.
Is the Oasis program that program that you're talking about where working visa where it provides reciprocity?
I don't think so. Well, I'll look it up.
I don't know much about the Oasis program. I do know that startup visa. Okay, it's a startup visa.
Startup visa. Okay.
Interesting.
Sorry, I don't know much about this program.
When I was looking, I think somebody earlier in the chat asked about that. Do they provide grants or certain funds for startup companies? Definitely, they do. As long as you fit the criteria for when you apply for those grants. So I looked into it as well of kind of getting some grants for that. But because I wasn't a student and because my visa type, I was F2 and not permanent like a F4 visa, then I couldn't qualify for those grants or those benefits. So keep in mind, grants and funds are available. So if you have a Korean partner, then you can apply together. But if you're solo, doing a solo venture, it's a lot more difficult. It's gonna have to be out of pocket. You can apply. I think the visa is D11. D11 is the investor visa. I think where if you invest 1억, I think.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So like over 100,000 or 100 million.
100 million won, which is about 100,000 US dollars.
Yeah, if you invest that, then you automatically get a D11 visa, which is basically it's a very good visa with a lot of you get a lot of rights. I mean, of course, you don't get voting rights and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think it's every 3 or 5 years that you have to renew it. But it's a pretty strong visa to hold. But again, I think if you have $100,000 to invest in a business. Maybe you wouldn't be checking out this chat right now.
Yeah. And also in terms of startups. So talk to me in Korean. A lot of people think Talk to Me Korean is a startup, or we started as a startup. We're not a startup. We didn't start as a startup. Startup, by definition, means you have no business model and you have investors from the beginning, and you start up the company, you accelerate it, and you aim for the exit. You sell the company to a bigger budget holder or whoever wants to acquire the company. So yeah, we're not technically a startup. I might be wrong about the definition of a startup, but it's the definition that I'm familiar with, at least in Korea. But the reason I'm saying this is the environment is becoming more and more friendly with startups in Korea.
Definitely.
So many young people are starting startups, and they want to show how many users they can acquire through like 3 months or for a year, and then they show the value of the company, and then they do what they call the value play.
Right.
Yeah, so they play the value game, and it's more common, and it's relatively easier than before to get investments just with a vision that you have.
Exactly, because there's a lot of VC venture capital funds essentially that want to find the next big thing. You know, what's the next WeWork? What's the next, I don't know, Uber? So you get these huge, big asset management companies that have funds from big, huge companies are trying to find these the small visionaries essentially, and they throw money at them. So there's a lot of cases that I've seen that actually abused, that where there's small companies that are startups, and they just have completely unrealistic expectations. But for foreigners coming to Korea, those options are not realistic. They usually apply only for Korean residents and are reserved for somebody who's very fluent with the system as well as the language. You got to know, and you got to have connections as well. So that's not a realistic option for most foreigners.
So starting a business is easy, but making it bigger, growing it is not as easy, just like in other countries. And I saw a really interesting question. So we talked about how for 30 plus candidates, 30 plus year old candidates, if we study there, Julie said, if we study there in South Korea for a year, do a Korean course and then try for a job, is it possible for us to work there? So related to, I might not have the perfect answer for this, but related to that, I would suggest maybe if you can, if the circumstances allow, spend 3 months in Korea, because it's relatively easy to get a student visa. If you register at a university for a summer program or there are many hagwons, like private institutes that also provide you with a student visa if you register long term.
I didn't know that.
I know there are at least 2. And you can register there, you can go study in the morning, and you have your afternoons free, right? Of course, it costs money to come to Korea and not work and just study. But if you can save up to do that, you can actually network with people, and you can do you're not allowed to work during those 3 months.
Right, but you can network.
But you can network and meet people, because Korea is still very homogenous. Everything's mostly Korean language based. So there's a limit to how much market research you can perform outside of Korea.
Right.
Come to Korea, get a feel of what life is like, and then what kind of jobs you think you can get, and then meet people really, really diligently. And then that'll be worth more than anything you can do outside of Korea.
True. So there's another question. Everyday Seb, how are the companies taxed?
How are companies taxed?
So this, I think, is basically the same kind of globally. I think it's your scale based on how big you are, the number of employees you have, whether you offer benefits to your employees or not. So I know in order to Korea, what's good about when you open a business in Korea, that once you've opened a business, it's the first thing you got to do is open up a business account. So you go to a bank and you can open up an account specifically for business. That way, you can see, what options are available to you as a business owner, whether you need investment, your loan options that you can get, and then at the end of the year, whenever you file your taxes, everything is already basically shown, what your expenses were and what your income, overall income is.
Yeah, and since pretty much everything, I think it's the global trend, but pretty much everything is digital, like
Definitely.
digitally, recorded. So all the transactions are through credit cards and maybe through apps. So everything's there. There's not much you need to like write or add. And in Korea, I think most companies and most like business owners actually do work with an independent freelancer accountant or an accounting firm, because they only charge like $300 a month and they do all the filing for you, and it's definitely worth it. We also work with an accounting firm.
But when you first started off, I'm sure you didn't. Did you still use an?
Not at first, because for the first year you are I forgot the term because I'm not that type yet anymore. 간이 사업자. 간이 사업자. Temporary.
저는 그런 거예요.
I think you're the 간이 사업자 phase 2. So at first the government doesn't go really hard on you, like it's fine, just worry about making money right now.
Because your margins you're probably going to be in the loss, which is true. So for the first year.
They only start looking closely like a year after that. So then you will have made some profits, and you will also have a better idea of how big the costs are and what your profit margins and all that. So you can. I recommend just hiring an accounting firm or an accountant, because that makes your job a whole lot easier.
And basically you'll end up paying less taxes. You save money, even if you spend for the accountant, you save money in the long run. So Kyle T, not sure if you can say, but do you know any good English speaking accountants? That's up to you, Kyle. You got to find them. I mean, that's simple. You can even go to Naver and just say, 영어 할 줄 아는 세무사? 아니면
Or you can go on LinkedIn, or you won't be searching for that in Korean. You can just do the search in English.
So you go to Naver and just type in English accountant.
English speaking accountant in Korea. You will find some links, and you can always change your accounting firm too. We did a couple times, and now we're satisfied with our current firm. The tax system is not like that hard on relatively smaller companies. And
So KJ Footballer says, after I graduate college, I want to go to South Korea and work in a company. So I would like to know if it's possible for a foreigner with a business degree to get a company job in South Korea. Question for you, KJ, Kyle. Can a Korean person who graduated from Korean university with a business degree, can he get a job in a company in the United States, let's say? And what if now let me add another variable. What if he can't speak English? Or he can speak English kind of broken? So it's kind of, you have to apply the same kind of mentality.
True.
I think it's pretty fair. I think even in US it's even easier than it would be in Korea, because it's, I don't know, they provide a lot of opportunities in the United States for, well, maybe actually, I don't know if that's still the case, but.
I mean, whenever we get job opportunity related questions, it seems like we're always going back to the topic of learn Korean really well, right? Learn to speak it really fluently. But it still does hold truth, right? So, and I know it's a little childish at times, but people in general like to work with people, foreigners who speak good Korean, because it's easier.
It's easier.
And even those who speak fluent English or other languages, for them it's easy, comfortable, but their coworkers, because they don't want to be the translator all the time.
Right.
So when it's a popular vote kind of decision, a lot of people will want to work with people who can already speak Korean if the expertise is the same.
Yeah. And again, even if you have the same degree, because there's a lot of Korean graduates with business degrees, right, that are even if you have the same degree, even if you're good, I mean, like let's say perfect at Korean. If there's 2 applicants, one Korean, one foreigner, I mean, it's less of a hassle for the company to hire a native Korean speaker, right? So unless a company really is looking for your expertise, like if you can provide some kind of networking where you bring some kind of, let's say, you have market insight from the United States and they use you essentially as marketing for the United States, then you have a good chance. But if you're coming in Korea to work simply for a small company within the Korean market, it's difficult. But if a company is looking to branch out and to provide, to merge into new markets, then in that case, yes, you have a much better opportunity. But still,
yeah, I mean, whenever we post job ads, I've received like a lot of questions about whether we hire people from other countries or not, and like really simply put, like for companies and for me as well as an employer, sometimes things are so much easier when that person is already in Korea. Like,
right.
Can you come in for an interview and when that person is like still in the US or we have to sponsor their visa, like things are like 10 times more complicated. So the companies are less willing to do that.
You gotta find housing. Yeah. Then you gotta, once they come in here, you gotta explain where to go, how to move around, set up a business, set up a bank account, set up a phone.
But you did it through the other route we talked about, being in Korea first and then, learning Korean and having other like kind of accumulating other career records. And how difficult was it for you personally to understand the procedure for registering your business? Like, was it a pretty steep learning curve?
I think it's same anywhere around the world. You have your first priority is to know what questions to ask. First is, what documentation do I need? Second, where do I get that documentation? Third, how long will it take? Okay, so then you go to one place, you're gonna find an obstacle. Okay, this is what you need from here. And that process is very easy in Korea because there's a lot of resources. And I found the most helpful resource, Naver blogs.
Oh.
So it's like a hit or miss sometimes, but they have so much information. You got to make sure the date is relevant because if you get too far back, then the policy has changed. But Naver blogs, it's filled with information. And from there, that's the beginning of my research. Oh, okay, I got here. So then I find keywords, and then those keywords I search again. And once I find a Korean government org website, then I say, okay, this is the official page. So this is exactly what I need. And I make a list of what I need to get. And yeah, it's very streamlined. So opening the business is very easy as long as you have the right documentations and the visa.
I see. Yeah, the visa is the hard part.
Yeah, that takes only 6 years. So
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You can do it just like that. 6 years.
Yeah.
All right. So some other questions you might want to answer before we go. It's been already 1 hour.
Wow.
Time flies. Okay. So thank you for like really specific questions. And normally when we also talk about like culture related topics, we still get a lot of Korean grammar related questions, and I feel bad whenever that happens. About not answering those questions because it might look like I'm ignoring the questions, but today we didn't get any Korean grammar related question.
Wow.
Which is great. Thank you so much.
So what BJ Pilaza says, how did I learn Korean and what does business Korean look like? I learned Korean through Talk to Me in Korean. Back in 2012, I mean, it was a small team then. I think it was just like 4 people.
4 or 5 people.
Yeah, Gyeongun, Kyunghwa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kept on learning Korean.
Yeah.
And do you feel like business Korean is a lot more difficult, or is it any different?
Listen, I don't think you can. Okay, So office language Korean is different from business Korean, I think.
Yeah.
This is how I would categorize it. Business Korean, you shouldn't learn it. You have to find it. So there were so many new words that I had to research while I was learning how to open the business. I learned specific gigwans like departments, the names of the departments. But if you try to study that beforehand when you don't need to do it, your ability to remember that it's difficult. I mean, once you find it, then you're not gonna. It's stored in your mind, and you don't have to go back. But if you don't need it, then it's kind of hard to learn. But office language, but office language, that is just basically mastering 천대말. You know, once you get 천대말 down, then you've basically mastered office language.
So don't use 반말 when it's not appropriate. That's it. Like it's the same as everyday spoken Korean. And like you said, business language jargons, you don't need to know them in advance. You will find them everywhere, like in emails too. Emails or work task management platforms, for example, approval, 승인, right?
Yep, 승인.
Like, but in spoken Korean, you won't say 승인할게요.
Right.
그렇게 하세요.
Yeah.
You just say 해주세요, right?
Yeah.
But you will see these like big words like 승인, like 재고해주세요.
맞아요,
Please think
재고.
about it again. Reconsider it. So those words will be used in business Korean emails only. And if you need to write them, look them up and use them.
Yeah.
If you see them in your emails, in the emails that you've received, look them up. So you can learn business Korean on the go as you go along.
Exactly.
That is one of the reasons that we don't have a business Korean course yet.
Yeah.
We want to in the future because there are things you can learn, of course, but you don't need to like open a book called Business Korean and try to remember all the jargons.
It's really difficult.
Yeah, and I saw an interesting, not a specific question here, but what kind of business did you open? You already mentioned it, but let's introduce your business again.
Sure.
It's called
Move Up, and it's an online healthy living platform. So this basically provides a space for people who live here in Korea to gather. We work out together through Zoom. The numbers are low. We keep it to 10 because more than that, it gets a little hectic. So just 10 people. We meet each other twice a week. And during that online time, we have 30 minutes of workout time, 15 minutes of kind of stretching and cool down, and then 15 minutes of mindful talking and essentially talking about health products, new questions that they have. And
related to the question by Everyday Seb, how are you acquiring new customers then?
Ah, good question. That's what the biggest struggle of any business is how do you increase your market, right?
Yeah, I mean, many people know you through the TV shows that you've been on, and many people follow you on Instagram, and you have many fans, you know, but not all fans are potential customers.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, so marketing is the biggest thing. I think, Hyun, you can agree that marketing is one of the departments that you invest so much money and you really got to invest a lot of money into marketing.
Yeah. Is that why you are posting more pictures of yourself dressed than naked? Because if you're like flexing your muscles in every single post, everybody's going to be like, oh, I can't be like that.
So yeah, it's
being more realistic.
There's finesse. Yeah,
okay.
you got to have a little bit of finesse of how much, what image you basically show.
I see.
And I can't just show them me lifting weights because I'm sending the different kind of image.
Yeah.
James Bond, 007. So it's a strategy. Like I'm also now. I'm shifting my model to, instead of opening to normal anybody who can join, I want to approach companies and provide services like, because here in Korea there's a new trend where you provide benefits to your employers. So for example, childcare services or language learning services, the company subsidizes that so that people can kind of do new hobbies together.
Yeah.
So one of those services that I want to pitch to companies is, you Move Up can be one of those services you can provide to your employees, where it's like a healthy, you don't have to go to anywhere. It's very low expense for the company itself and good for the employees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's your business, Move Up. If you were not here, and if I were to ask to introduce your business, I would introduce it like it's a moving service. You can only move upstairs. You can't move to any downstairs floor.
Very articulate.
No, but yeah, move up. Okay, Fontini. Let's answer this as
Fotini.
Okay.
I think
Fotini.
Fotini.
Fotini. Sorry,
Yeah.
the screen is a little far away. My eyes are getting older. So Fotini, let's answer this as our last question today. Could you tell us about your cooking videos? How did the idea come up?
So cooking videos. So yeah, because I've been more active on YouTube now, and I want to create more content for people. Cooking is just something I do. I've loved cooking ever since I was in university, and I cook Greek food, I cook Korean food, healthy food, and also very unhealthy food.
Yeah.
And basically what I do is I have different series. One is Han cooking, which is I cook Korean food and I explain a little bit about what the ingredients are, why they use it, and what it means to eat that food. And then I have...
Was the similarity in pronunciation intended?
Of course.
한국인, Korean person, 한국인.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Korean cooking.
Okay.
And then 외 cooking is instead of like 외국인, it's like foreign cooking.
Okay.
And that's when I explain, that's for the Korean audience, where I explain how we, what we prepare, how we eat it, and the meaning behind our foods. Because, there's so much culture that exists between each bite of food that it's a fun experience, and I just really enjoy doing it. I film everything at my house. I do the editing by myself and the translating by myself as well.
Perfect. When are you inviting me?
So I'm gonna do some Han cooking, but do you even know how to cook? I mean, I think you can. You can't even boil an egg.
I can boil water.
Water, okay, that's good. That's a start.
Because I can boil water in the most traditional Korean way.
Do you put it in ondol, or what do you do?
I'll think of something. No, like boil water and speak a lot of Korean around it.
Oh, that's amazing.
And yeah, you can only do it like if you are only like really fluent in Korean.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That'll
be the next video.
Okay.
Okay, how to boil water in Korean.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. All right. So that's a wrap.
That's
Thank you so much for your specific questions, and please, I will also try to spread the word about Move Up, your new business. How many months has it been?
Started in January, so
wow.
9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
So I hope it's going well, and I know many people are happy about the service that you provide. So you just need to find more people.
That's right. Keep working hard.
Yeah. So just not as a summary, but let me just emphasize some of the points that you mentioned. You came to Korea and started doing something that was not related to the current business. It took you 9 years to get here. You could have done it sooner, but you enjoyed everything you were doing before, all the previous steps enough, right? And you can do the same thing. You can try to look for a job right away, right off the bat, like right off the plane, I guess. And maybe hopefully you will find a job. But in most situations, you will have to take a detour. It'll take a while, and getting the visa will take a long time. And learning Korean will definitely be a prerequisite. So that's my summary.
Right? You got it. Yeah, that's it. And detours are okay, guys. Remember that. You might have a goal when you first land, and then that goal might change completely, but that's life. That's really
and the market itself might change. The business idea that you had might not be so relevant in like a year or two. So you just have to keep your eyes
flexible.
peeled. Yeah.
Be flexible.
Keep your mind flexible.
Thank you guys for joining. Thank you so much for your questions. This was really fun.
Thank you for joining today. And thank you everyone for staying until now. And we will see you in the next one. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Bye.